观众朋友们，大家好，欢迎收看今天的明镜连线，我是主持人卓贤。在加拿大唐人街居住的一位华人妈妈，在家里吃包子的时候，一个包子居然活了过来。妈妈从此带着包子做饭买菜，对它非常宠溺，就像对自己的亲生儿子一样。小包子很快经过叛逆期长大成人，把女朋友带回家，后来还想要搬走，母子俩吵了起来。一气之下，妈妈把包宝宝拿起来一口吞下。很快妈妈就发现这只是一场梦，小包子映射着她的儿子。一觉醒来之后，真正的儿子回了家，与妈妈和好。上面这个故事是包宝宝，它就是今年赢得了奥斯卡最佳动画短片的电影，讲述了母子亲情和空巢现象。包宝宝的导演石之矛是加拿大华人，因为这一次的获奖，她也成为了奥斯卡这个项目下第一位获奖的华人女性。在网络上，多数的华人都对包宝宝的获奖表示了认同和兴奋，因为这代表的不仅仅是华人界在奥斯卡的胜利，导演石之矛更因为是皮克斯动画工厂的第一位短片华人女性导演，成为了华裔的骄傲。但是网上也同时泛起另一种声音，称看不懂动画的文化隐喻，还在妈妈吃下包宝宝的那一刻笑出了声。一些喜爱影片的华人愤怒回应道，这部影片又不是为所有人做的。在今天的明镜连线中，我们请到了在加拿大温哥华的动画艺术家 Amanda Wong。在我们的对话里， Amanda 跟我们聊了同为加拿大华人他在看包宝宝时候的感受，以及对于动画界石之矛导演的获奖代表了什么。当然，他也分享了他对西方观众不理解包宝宝文化隐喻的看法。
So, are you first generation Canadian in your family?
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about your family background?
So my family immigrated here from Hong Kong in the 1980s. They immigrated to Ottawa, which is pretty close to Toronto, where the director of Bao came from. And my family is very traditional. Almost everyone in my family, in my generation, is either a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. And when I wanted to do animation right out of high school, and I was actually accepted into an animation school back then, but because my family is so traditional, my mother was like, you're not going there. So I ended up getting a business degree first and working for a year as a market research analyst. And then I decided, I still want to do animation. And by then I was in my early 20s and I wasn't living with my mom. So it was a lot easier for me to just tell her that I was going to animation school and moving across the country to Vancouver to do that.
So is your family supporting your decision and your work now?
Yeah, I think it was a lot easier for my mother to accept it when I was in my early 20s and independent versus when I was 18 and still a student. And I don't think she really understands my job at all, but I think she's happy for me. When I was working on the My Little Pony movie, the trailer for it came out in the summer, and I asked my mom, oh, the trailer for my movie came out. Do you want to see it? And she's like, nah.
So you actually showed them your work?
Yeah, but she doesn't really understand it. I haven't told her, I never talked to her about animation or movies or anything because she tends to watch media from Hong Kong or China. And she doesn't really pay attention to Western media.
So do you still speak Chinese to your family?
A little bit. Unfortunately, I'm one of the people where my mother speaks Cantonese to me and then I answer her in English.
Oh, I see. So they didn't ask you to learn Chinese when you were young?
It's kind of complicated, but I briefly went to Chinese school for a couple of years, but we ended up moving to Australia for 2 years, and then we had to come back because my father passed away. And I guess when we came back, it was just so, my mom just never enrolled me back.
I see.
I think she was really overwhelmed when my father passed away, and because he usually drove, and the Chinese school was downtown, so I guess she found it too overwhelming to commute me there.
I see. So Bao wins Oscars last weekend. What was your reaction when you first learned about it?
I was very, very happy. I was very happy for the representation of Asian Americans, not just Asians, but specifically an Asian American movie. I was very happy because Domi is a Canadian. She's an animator from Toronto, and like Toronto is very specifically featured in the movie. I was also very, very happy because I'm hoping this will signal a change at Pixar, because previously there has never been a woman who directed any Pixar short, let alone a woman who was Chinese Canadian.
So did you see the movie before the announcement?
No, I only saw it when I went to see The Incredibles in theaters.
I see. So do you personally feel related to the story? How do you feel when you were watching it?
Oh, this has never happened to me before in the theaters, but when I was watching it, it just affected me so deeply that I was crying uncontrollably. I could not stop, and then I had to pull myself together when The Incredibles 2 started.
What are the moments that hit you the most?
I think for me, I'm too close to the material and the themes and the culture, and I think I began crying when the Bao began pulling away from the mother. But I started really sobbing when they cut to her just crying quietly in bed, because I can't handle watching characters on screen cry. But for me, I also had a very difficult relationship with my mother, and just watching this short, which was presented from the point of view of the mother, just gave me these very strong flashbacks to my childhood, but also these feelings of guilt, because I know that my mother loves me very, very much and was just doing her best, especially because my father did pass away, and she had to do everything on her own.
I see. So when this movie Bao first came out, were your friends talking about it? Was it a big deal in your industry?
I would say Asian American animators were very excited. Maybe some allies who are happy for diversity were happy, but on the whole, I don't think too many people were talking about it.
I see. So now I want to address the elephant in the room, because I've seen quite a few comments online saying that, especially from probably a foreign or Westerner perspective, saying that I don't quite get a film, especially the scene where mom eats the ball. So I wonder, how do you interpret that scene, and what do you think about people's dislikes?
Unfortunately, my answer will be a little complicated and not that straightforward. On the whole, some of those comments that I've seen from Twitter probably do have some racial ignorance and just callous dismissiveness of people who are not willing to think about the film a little bit harder because they think they can't relate to it. But I've also seen comments from people who did not like the short, who for them, they go to the movies to be entertained. And I can sort of understand that there are no other shorts where the images you see on screen is a metaphor for anything. Like, if you are watching a short about a singing volcano, the singing volcano is not a dream and it doesn't represent anything. It's just a singing volcano. But in this short, the bow is not really there. It's the mother working out her issues of alienation with her son. So I tried to see it from their point of view. Also, I have a friend who works in the industry who is also Chinese Canadian, and she also thought it was very racially insensitive for some people to immediately dismiss this film or not understand it. And initially she thought perhaps the cultural misunderstanding comes from Western families not really being as attached to their children, and maybe they couldn't relate to it. But then she showed the short to her mother, and her mother didn't understand the short either. And we're all Chinese, so I don't know. I feel like if people don't like it, then that's their prerogative. I love it. I also think a lot of the comments on Twitter are not from people who are very thoughtful and probably are being racially insensitive, especially the comments where they call Bao a ball of crap or whatever.
Yeah, so I was also wondering, as an artist working in this industry, have you also personally experienced any other kind of cultural misunderstanding or stereotypes in your workplace that you personally feel annoyed about?
I would say Vancouver is a place that is very, very welcoming to my culture specifically, because there are so many Asians that live in Vancouver.
Right.
And my last team, which was the Netflix series Last Kids on Earth, was either 50-50 Asians or more Asians than non-Asian people. I will say, when I worked in the game industry, there was a year or so where I was the only woman on the team. It was a very small team. It was only 7 people, but I was still the only woman in the office. And I think that bothered me a lot more than any racial experiences I've ever had.
I see. So I found you through this Visible Women tag on Twitter. I was wondering if you personally feel very strongly about gender equality in the animation or comics industry.
I do, absolutely. I think it's unfortunate that to date, Pixar, which was supposed to be this bastion of storytelling and creativity, has yet to have a woman solo directed animated film. In fact, there has never been a woman directed animated feature film except for Jennifer Ye for Kung Fu Panda. The most opportunity as anyone ever got is a co-director, but there's never been a solo director. So I do feel very strongly about that because, well, we are 50% of the population. It's true that in the past, there have traditionally been more men than women in this industry. But given that schools now generally have more women than men in their ratio, it seems really, really strange that positions of directors or art directors have this ratio where maybe there's only one woman, you know? That seems suspect.
However, a lot of people also say it's quite a big year for Asian representation in the Oscars, because not only in this short animated short category, but also in the documentary category as well. People are seeing more Asian women in the Oscars selection. Do you feel like it's a good sign, or do you just think it's another year of Oscars trying to add more diversity?
I think it's a very good sign. I think the Oscars in some ways is still a little bit behind the times, especially because the people who are voting for Oscars are predominantly white and the majority are over 60 years old. But last year, even for movies that weren't nominated for Oscars, had very good Asian representation. There was the Netflix movie To All the Boys I've Loved Before. There was Crazy Rich Asians. There was Searching, starring John Cho. I feel like even if sometimes movements that advocate for better diversity is often very messy, or some people interpret it as annoying, I feel like when people use medium like Twitter to loudly verbalize the need for change, I think it's an overall I think it's a net positive. And I feel like Hollywood in general is slowly lurching towards better diversity.
Though it seems like people's understanding or misunderstanding of Asian culture is not going to go away that quickly. So what would you hope people to feel, or what do you hope them to make an effort in when they were trying to appreciate art from Asian artists?
I think mostly what we need is just more of it. Like more shorts and more movies that present different points of view and from different cultures that are carefully researched and come from a place of authenticity.
以上就是今天的明镜连线，感谢您收看明镜电视，我们下期再见。